Okay, folks. Hold on while I hashtag this really quick. Like everyone else should be doing. It's right there. UCSD, hashtag UCSD. All right? So our next speaker, our inspirational speaker, is Dr. Angélica Gutiérrez, and I'm going to go a little history on her, so you know who she is. She was born and raised in Los Angeles community of Lincoln Heights. She received her BA in Political Science and Sociology with honors from the University of California, Los Angeles, and her MPP in Public Policy from the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy and the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Dr. Gutierrez. You got it?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Dr. Gutierrez recently earned her PhD at the UCLA Anderson School of Management. Her research interests include diversity and inclusion in universities and in the workplace and the effects of stereotypes on negotiations. She has presented her work at the Academy of Management and the Society of Personal Social Psychology. Her research has been published in the Journal of Experimental and Social Psychology. After completing her PhD, Dr. Gutierrez was awarded the University of Michigan's National Center of Institutional Diversity Postdoctoral Fellowship. So it's all in your booklet that's in your bag. I'm just doing a little bit. I hope that you'll all take it out and read it. I'm going to welcome her up to the stage now, please. Dr. Angélica Gutiérrez.
Can you guys hear me? Yes. I was a little tricky wearing a dress because you can't really find a place to clip it, but hopefully this will work. I just want to start off by saying that I am absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you guys, and I have to say that this is actually the highlight of my 2013 so far, just having the opportunity to be here with you. And before I go any further, I definitely want to take a quick opportunity to thank the UCSD TRiO programs for hosting this incredible conference. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I also want to give a quick thank you to my fiance, Jamie Zamora. He's the camera guy. And as all of you guys will realize once you get to college and once you go on to graduate school, it's going to be absolutely critical to have an excellent support system. And having a fiance like him has definitely made a difference in my life. But I do want to say that I'm absolutely excited to be here, and just to tell you guys how excited I am, I just flew back from Michigan, and I wasn't scheduled to fly back for another month. But when I heard that the TRiO programs were going to be hosting this leadership conference and that all of you guys are going to be here, I jumped at the opportunity, and I paid, not going to say exactly how much, but there was a few $100 extra just to move up my flight. So I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you today. And as was briefly mentioned in my bio, I am currently a university business school professor. I know you guys probably don't expect to see a business school professor that looks like me, right? Most of them are white, most of them are male, most of them are older, and I'm none of those things. And they're also tall. I'm a little bit more petite. But I have to... Chiquita pero picosa, right? I do want to mention that although I typically interact with and I teach college students and also graduate school students, these are students that are usually pursuing their master's in business administration. I have to say that my favorite students are middle school students and high school students. And the reason why I absolutely love interacting with all of you guys is because you are at such a critical point in your life. Now, I remember being 13, 14, and 15 thinking, wow, I've already lived an eternity. But the reality is that your lives are just about to start. So what does that mean? Your past, all of the circumstances that you may have experienced, everything that people may have told you about your inability to do X, Y, and Z, none of that matters. The only thing that's going to matter is what you guys do today and what you end up doing tomorrow. And let me tell you something else. I can tell without knowing you guys personally, I can tell that all of you guys that are in here are destined for greatness. Greatness. And let me tell you why. The reason why I know that is because you guys are here on a Saturday morning. As was previously mentioned, you guys could have been at home watching TV, interacting with your friends, shopping at the mall, which is exactly what I would have been doing at your age. But instead, you're here. So the fact that you are here, ready to participate in today's conference, tells me a couple of things about you. It tells me that you guys are a group of students that care about your education. It tells me that you actually care about your future and that you're fully committed to getting the tools that you're going to need to succeed in life. And let me tell you something else. You guys, all of you that are here, are already ahead of the game. You guys have a tremendous advantage over millions and millions of students out there. Why do you guys have an advantage over them? Because you guys are here and they're not. So today you're going to have the opportunity to receive tremendous support and resources by participating in various workshops. And I really hope that throughout the day, you'll keep an open mind and you'll try to absorb as much information as possible. And you know what? I'm not the only one that believes in your unlimited potential. The TRiO program, counselors, directors, coordinators, mentors, they all believe in your incredible potential. And that's the reason why they continue to invest so much of their time and effort into you guys. That's the reason why they decided to organize this conference in the first place. So let's take a quick second to just give them a round of applause for their excellence. Encourage all of you to do is to keep an open mind and to try to absorb as much information as possible. Another thing that I definitely want all of you to keep in mind is that none of the circumstances that you've encountered in the past matter anymore. None of the circumstances can define you. Only you can define yourself. You have the power to define who you are and who you will become. And I mention that because one of the reasons why I've been able to get this far in life, one of the reasons why I am part of less than 1% of the population that got a PhD, one of the reasons why I'm one of the few Latina business school professors in the nation is because I maintained a belief that nobody has the power to define me. None of my past circumstances have the power to define me. And I share that with all of you because I had a lot of people trying to define me at a very early age. And it all started when I was only 4 years old. And by the way, what I'm going to share with you today is the first time that I share this information publicly because these experiences have been very personal. But I feel very comfortable with all of you. Estamos en familia. I see all of you as my brothers and sisters. So I'll share with you some of my childhood experiences. I had somebody trying to define me when I was only 4 years old. And some of you may be wondering, who in the world would be trying to define a 4-year-old? It all started with my father. When I was only 4 years old, my father and mother used to fight a lot. They used to argue constantly. And I was the reason why they argued so much. My mom wanted to ensure that she provided me with a good education, and my dad tried to define me as someone that was not worth investing in. He would always tell my mom, she's not worth putting in school because she's just going to get pregnant and she's just going to end up getting married just like the rest of her cousins. So she's not worth our time or investment. Don't waste your time putting her in school because she's not going to amount to much. That was my father. And my mom had to concede. She had to agree with his orders because it was very difficult for her to go against his orders. So she ended up homeschooling me. So I didn't go to school for preschool. I went very little in kindergarten. And she basically taught me to read and write and do math in Spanish. It wasn't up until I was about to start the first grade that she decided to put me at our local public school. And by that time, it was a little easier to go against my father's will because by that time, he was already in and out of the picture. He ended up leaving when I was about 7 years old. He didn't think that we were worth sticking around for. So my mom ended up putting me at a local public school in my first grade. And I remember being so excited. You know, I was really looking forward to learning different things and to having an opportunity to interact with my classmates and to get friends. And it was a complete nightmare when I got to the first grade because I was bullied constantly. The reason why I was bullied, you guys might not be very visible now, but I had a very severe burn on my right wrist. And so not a day went by that I didn't get home just crying because I was constantly teased. And my mom finally decided, you know what, she's going to start the second grade very soon. She decided to put me in a private school. And so we were both very hopeful. My mom and I believed that I was finally going to receive the education that she had dreamt of. But a few weeks into the school year, in the second grade, the principal and my teacher called my mom and told her that they wanted to set up a meeting with her. And I'll never forget this day. It was probably one of the scariest moments of my life as a kid. We went to the principal's office, the teacher is there, and they had brought in a translator because my mom didn't know how to communicate in English, she only knew Spanish. And through the translator, the teacher ended up telling my mom, Angélica can't continue coming to school here. And so my mom was shocked. She's like, she told the translator, why is it that Angélica can't continue coming to school here? I've been paying the tuition. I don't think she has any disciplinary issues. Why is it that she can no longer attend? And the principal proceeded to tell her, well, she's been failing all of her exams. She never turns in her homework. It's obvious that she has a learning disability. Right? Sounds crazy now. I go on to get a PhD, but according to this principal and this teacher, I had a learning disability. And it was simply because I only knew Spanish. How was I supposed to know how to read the assignments, right? I wasn't able to submit my homework assignments, and I wasn't able to do well on my exams because I simply didn't know the language. So my mom ended up pleading. Can you hear me? No. Hello? How did you hear that? I might not even need a mic. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Sweet. My voice has been paying off. All right. So my mom ended up begging the principal and teacher to just give me a chance and to continue allowing me to go to school. And so the principal finally decided, you know what, we'll go ahead and give Angélica a try. She can continue going to school, but she has to improve her grades. My mom promised them that I would definitely do a lot better. So that day, as soon as we got home, the first thing that my mom did was that she called her comadre on the phone. Her comadre, do all of you guys know what a comadre is? Yeah. Oh, all right, some of you are kind of shaking your heads. It's basically a very close best friend that you consider almost a relative because you have such a strong connection with. So she called her comadre, and her comadre at the time was taking ESL classes at the local library. So she told her, hey, you know what, can you go ahead and come every day after school to help Angélica with her homework, and in return, I'll go ahead and cook dinner for you and I'll help you with your chores. So she ended up helping me, I ended up doing well. By the time the fourth grade came around, I was so excited that I finally knew English that I started talking a lot in class. And I'll be honest with you guys, I disturbed the class quite a bit. I interrupted the instructor a lot. Until one day, he got so upset with me that he yelled across the room. He said, hey, motor mouth, you're never going to get ahead in life. Why don't you just go ahead and be quiet? Settle down. He told me that. So by the time I was only 11 years old, I already had a lot of people trying to define me. I had my father trying to define me as someone that wasn't worth investing in because I was just going to end up getting pregnant and end up getting married just like my cousins. I had a school principal define me as someone with a learning disability who couldn't be taught in a regular education system. I had a fourth grade teacher trying to define me as a motor mouth, as someone who wouldn't get ahead in life. And I was certainly being defined by society as another statistic because I was growing up in a very rough neighborhood. low-income household, and I was being raised by a single mother. So society certainly didn't have very high expectations. And you know what? My story is actually not unique. A lot of highly successful people that we see today have had various challenges in their life. Let's take, for example, Sonia Sotomayor. How many of you know who she is? Very good, okay. So for those of you who didn't raise your hands, Sonia Sotomayor is only the third female appointed by a U.S. president to the U.S. Supreme Court. She is the first Latina U.S. Supreme Court justice, and she had her share of challenges when she was growing up. She grew up with an alcoholic father. Her father passed away when she was only 9 years old. By the time she was 11, she was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, and she had to inject insulin shots into herself just to stay alive. Another example of a very successful individual who also had hardships growing up is Hilda Solis. How many of you know who she is? Very good. So for those of you who may not know Hilda Solis, she was the first Latina elected to the California State Senate. She was the first Latina appointed to the U.S. Secretary of Labor. The first Latina ever. And you know what? When she was growing up, she grew up in with immigrant parents just like many of us. And when she was in high school, her counselor told her parents that she wasn't college material, that she was better off following in her older sister's footsteps of becoming a secretary. Well, she certainly became a secretary, but it was Secretary of Labor, right? One of the highest ranking positions in government. Another prime example is President Obama. He had his share of hardships as well. He also grew up without a father in his life. But what has been key to their success is that none of these individuals have allowed other people or their past circumstances to define who they are or who they were capable of becoming. Another key to their success has been being able to identify their purpose in life. For the people that I mentioned, their purpose has been being of public service, right? Trying to positively impact people's lives. And they have leveraged their passion. They have held on tight to their passion during those challenges that they've encountered to help them get to those goals. And you can definitely do the same thing as you face various challenges. But you know what? I'll share something with you that a lot of successful people do not share. It's going to be very challenging. It's going to be very difficult achieving your goals. And the higher in education you go, the harder it's going to be. The more you enter fields, such as STEM fields, in which we are underrepresented, the harder it's going to be. Why is that? Because it's very likely that your experience will be similar to mine when I entered the business field, which is you may start wondering whether you even belong in that field, because there may not be other people around you who look like you. But you know what? And I share this with you because I went through a lot of self-doubt when I was a PhD in a business program. Just to give you a little bit of context, less than 1% of the US population get into a PhD program. Business PhD programs only admit 2 to 3 students a year. So what does that mean? We are competing against hundreds and hundreds of applicants in the US, and there are also a lot of international students applying for the same slots. So the likelihood of actually getting into a program is very small. So what does that tell us? That tells us that most of the people that are admitted into these programs are brilliant, very talented. So when I got into the PhD program, I'll be honest with all of you, I had a lot of self-doubt. There were a lot of nights that I was crying thinking I wasn't going to make it. When I didn't see other Latinos or even African Americans in the PhD business programs, I started wondering whether I actually belonged in that field. I started thinking to myself, wow, there aren't any other Latinos around. Maybe it's because we're not meant to be here. Maybe it's for a reason. And I share that with all of you so that when you guys get to your classes and you end up being the only Latinos or the only African Americans in an organic chemistry class, or when you're the only ones in your chemical engineering classes, you'll know that that's part of the process. all of the self-doubts that you may be experiencing, all of those fears, all of those uncertainties are going to be normal. But I am here to tell you that you do have what it takes to get through it and achieve all of the goals that you aspire. And during those times that you ask yourself whether you actually have what it takes to get there, ask yourself, if I don't do it now, then who will? Who will? And I'm going to share some very interesting facts with all of you. Just in closing, because I know that we're limited on time. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, minorities, meaning African Americans, Latinos, Asians, minorities will be the majority by 2042. Currently, Latinos are the fastest growing minority group in the U.S. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Latinos will be 29% of the U.S. population by the year 2050. 29%. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. According to my projections, we're going to be a bigger majority a whole lot sooner than that. So what does that tell us? Yeah, that's right, that's right. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the problem is not the numbers. We definitely have the people. We definitely have the capacity. The issue, though, the challenge, is that we continue to be underrepresented in various fields, especially STEM fields. And let me just mention to all of you, I am one of the biggest advocates of graduate school. I encourage my mentees to pursue graduate degrees, but recognize that there are some fields that we already have covered. And I'm not going to mention what those fields are because I don't want to offend anyone, but there are at least one or two fields where we've already saturated them. We've got them completely covered. There are other fields, though, like STEM, that we still need to increase our representation in. So I encourage all of you to consider fields such as STEM. And I'll be honest, pursuing your goals and pursuing these fields will be challenging. It will be difficult, but recognize that you definitely have the capacity to do well. And let's be real, nothing in life that's ever worth pursuing is actually easy, right? If something was worth pursuing and something was very easy, we'd have a lot more people doing the same thing. So in closing, we all have a story to tell. We've all endured various hardships in our lifetime, but it's important for us to recognize that we went through it all for a reason. There was a purpose behind it. And recognize your past, that's important, but never allow it to limit your future. Never allow your past to try to influence what you're capable of doing in the future. And as Sylvester Stallone and Rocky had said, it's not about the hits you take, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep on going. I definitely want you guys to keep that in mind. It's about channeling all of your fears, all of your doubts, your uncertainties to propel you forward toward your goals rather than allowing those fears and doubts to keep you away from them. And remember, people do not have the power to define you. Your conditions and your circumstances don't have the power to define you. It's what you choose to do with all of those things that will define who you'll become. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. The microphone went out. I don't think they got this one working yet. No?